Well, hello everyone. My name is Zachary O'Shea, and this is Box of Teeth. I have another horror-themed minion monster for all of you for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition right now. Here in May, we're covering a specific antagonist and his minions that you can use for a horror-themed Dungeons & Dragons campaign, and that is the Groom. He is a riff off of Frankenstein's monster, but he's not the first one of these monsters created. That's actually the Relic, who is female and sought to create a mate, thus the Groom. However, that has not worked out very well, and now these two evil entities are clashing against one another constantly. The Groom seeks nothing more than destroying the Relic, as well as bringing oblivion to everyone else, including himself. The Groom and his minions cover three subgenres of horror, which are science horror, cosmic horror, and body horror, and we delve deep into body horror with a sprinkle of cosmic and science horror today with the Numbskull. Encased in a rime-kissed cage of sigil-stained iron, this fleshless skull screams with the voice of an Arctic tundra. Pale wisps of necrotic energy come out of this undead creature's eye sockets. Its teeth have been replaced long ago by icicles. A hint of the Numbskull spine dangles along behind it, but it's kind of an ephemeral afterthought that just dangles from the cage's bottom as the horror floats along. Every Numbskull is born from self-inflicted torture. It once belonged to a nihilistic member of a Nepenthe cult that worshipped the Groom. This now-dead cultist believed that existence is a worthless endeavor, and one day entropy would drag it back into the lifeless oblivion that exists between stars. Thus, it slipped on this enchanted head cage of its own volition and relished every second as torment burnt away its identity and soul until only an instrument of oblivion remained. The Numbskull seeks not only to devour the living, but all sources of heat. The icy nature of its animation provides this undead anathema with a variety of cold spells and a version of chilled touch, which is actually just that spectral spine that I mentioned whipping out and slapping someone. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at the Numbskull statistics for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. The Numbskull is a challenge rating 4 tiny undead that is chaotic evil. It's got a low armor class and a pretty low number of hit points, but it is resistant to fire and necrotic damage, immune to cold and poison damage, and immune to the conditions of charmed, frightened, paralyzed, poisoned, and prone, and of course has a fly and hover speed. It is a 5th level spellcaster that uses Wisdom. It can cast Chill Touch at will, as well as Ice Knife. 3 times per day each, it can use Chromatic Orb, but only for cold damage, and it's advanced to a 2nd level casting, so it does 48 cold damage. And once per day, it can cast Dispel Magic. It has an ability called Cold Heart, so whenever it takes cold damage, which remember, it's immune to, it heals half of that amount of damage and regains 1 use per day of its Chromatic Orb. Likewise, it has a really small slam attack where it can just ram into someone. It doesn't do a whole lot of damage, a little bit of bludgeoning, a little bit of cold, but that's not really what it's there for. It's to spit out spells at heroes. Now, I think this is a nice little creepy creature to throw against your heroes, part of a cult and maybe one of its backup, like a war dog or that sort of thing, but it's just a little screaming human skull. That's always nice. But I'm wondering how we'd use it in your campaign. I'd love to hear that down in the comments below. Of course, you can find the Numbskull, the Groom, and the rest of his minions, along with hundreds of other horror-themed monsters, all for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. They're all perfectly free at boxofteeth.blogspot.com. If you're more interested in the non-Dungeons & Dragons horror-related role-playing projects that I have, or the horror fiction that I write, that includes Grease Paint right there, It's Got a Killer Clown, book 2 will be out sometime this summer, so keep an eye out for that. You can always go to www.zacharyoshea.com. As always, I appreciate your time and your attention, and have a wonderful rest of the day.